But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. By the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe, what to think, and what to buy. The table is tilted, folks. The game is rigged. And nobody seems to notice. Nobody seems to care. Good, honest, hard-working people, white collar, blue collar, doesn't matter what color shirt you have on. Good, honest, hard-working people continue. These are people of modest means. Continue to elect these rich cocksuckers who don't give a fuck about them. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you at all. At all. At all. Yeah. You know? And nobody seems to notice, nobody seems to care. That's what the owners count on, the fact that Americans will probably remain willfully ignorant of the big red, white, and blue dick that's being jammed up their assholes every day. Because the owners of this country know the truth. It's called the American dream, because you have to be asleep.
The fact that it's cheap isn't necessarily a good thing at all, as I'll come to in a second. The fact that it's cheap is part of the hard problem of governance. The fact that it's cheap means any small state or even conceivably individuals could do this, and that is a very dangerous thing.
There's only probably under $10 million per year, and maybe far less than that, being spent on geoengineering research. It's a mix of a handful of government grants and some private money, including support from Bill Gates.
Bill Gates invests in geoengineering. Geoengineering destroys crops. Monsanto supplies the seeds to replace those crops. Bill Gates invests in Monsanto. So Bill Gates makes a ton of money. Monsanto makes a ton of money. And the small farmer gets squashed.
Corn prices go higher because of a severe drought in this country. Where 41% of the country, or the world's supply of corn comes from. So corn prices are higher, the farmer has more money, so what does he do? He buys fertilizers, which drives up the mosaic stock, or he could purchase genetically modified seeds from Monsanto.
You've got severe drought in Africa. In 2011, there was severe drought. This is causing nothing but death. It's causing starvation, it's causing malnutrition, it's causing a severe water shortage. How do you grow anything without water? You cannot grow anything without water. So what does Monsanto do? They say, oh, we got a drought-tolerant corn for you. There's been an excessive push to get bioengineered crops into Africa. They look at severe conditions as an opportunity. They're disaster capitalists. Okay, so here you have farmers, and they've got flooding, they've got droughts, they've got everything that totally wipes them out. So what happens? Okay, if they plant it early enough in the year, they can go ahead and try and plant again. So buy more seed. Okay, buy Monsanto seed. So they're just raking up on that end of it. Okay, so if you can create enough weather manipulation, you can shorten growing seasons, you can create enough of that disaster, and you've got the seed supply, they've got to come to you.
Geoengineers have stated on the record that if global geoengineering was started, it could cause droughts in Asia and Africa. And they state that to the American public for probably obvious reasons. Why would they tell the American public that it could also cause droughts here? Why wouldn't it cause droughts here? There's nothing special about America and the geography here that would not have the same effect as Asia and Africa. If the atmosphere is filled with particulates, those particulates diminish and disperse rainfall. Period. There's too many condensation nuclei, so the water droplets do not combine and fall as rain. They simply adhere to those tiny particles and migrate further, and that's exactly what we see.
One of the suggestions about geoengineering has been that we genetically modify trees and plants. We genetically modify crops to be aluminum resistant, and this is ongoing at this time. And part of the geoengineering scheme is to say we're going to put all these chemicals and particles into our atmosphere, which is going to cause air pollution, water pollution, changes in soil pH, and could disrupt agriculture crop production to a great degree. So therefore, instead of saying that maybe this isn't a good idea that we pollute our air, water, and soils with the chemicals we're going to put into the atmosphere, which do come back down, there is a scheme abounding, which is happening right now, to modify some crops so that they are aluminum resistant to the types of chemicals and particles they're going to put into the atmosphere.
It's just going to get worse until the point where we're not going to be able to grow anything at all unless it's a Monsanto genetically modified, abiotic stress resistant seed.
The chemical companies and the and Monsanto and all of these companies are working together to make us totally dependent on their products for growing corn or growing any kind of agricultural product or trees, whatever. We're going to corporatize not only where the rainfall goes and who gets it through geoengineering and weather modification schemes, but we're also going to say that these are going to be the only crops that are going to grow in areas where we're putting in toxic chemicals that are coming down and altering the soils.
One of the most basic things about human society is that we need food and water. And these are two of the things that are most severely dependent upon good weather. Rain at the right time of the year, sunshine so crops can grow, not enough sunshine and they don't grow, too much water, the plants die, not enough water, the plants die. All of this goes back to the amount of food that's available. So if you starve people, they will be vulnerable. They will be much easier to manipulate and forced to do whatever a government wants them to do. So if you control how much food there is, or its availability, through things like the weather, or using the weather as a strategic tool militarily, you can, dramatically influence what's going on in a country. And by doing that over and over again, sequentially through a region, it's possible that you can change the political spectrum over an entire region by doing this over and over again. Maybe even, do it over a much wider region, create so much instability that you're able to, come in and say, oh, we have these wonderful fast-growing crops, genetically modified, and this, you'll have something to eat in less than 3 weeks, and I imagine that, if you can control the food supply, that you can then consolidate the financial and the political interests of a country.
Could predicting the weather enable a group or specific entity to profit from that knowledge of knowing what type of weather or weather pattern will be? Absolutely. That's what all commodities are driven by. They're driven by predicting the weather, how the weather will be in a certain location, and that directly is correlated to the price of that commodity. Absolutely, there's no doubt.
While there are a number of agendas associated with these damaging programs, one thing's for sure, they can be used to control our weather and thus corporatize every natural system on the planet. This enables certain individuals to consolidate an enormous amount of both monetary and political power into the hands of a few at the expense of every living thing on the planet.
Just by definition, the geoengineering programs are a direct assault on the most elemental aspects of nature.
What we're doing when we modify the weather is we're changing the world's climate and we're changing the microclimates, and we are doing it.
There are things we can say for certain. There's a mountain of metal raining down on us. We are certainly breathing that metal.
We have documented from the computer modeling some unintended consequences.
If such a contamination is present, shouldn't we investigate? Shouldn't local agencies investigate, which they have patently refused to do?
There's no question that large-scale climate engineering is untested and dangerous. I would disagree quite strongly that it is doesn't exist. I think that the capacity to do it in engineering terms most certainly exists, and that's part of the reason we have to think seriously about how we manage that.
We are breathing a mountain of metal, and that can't be denied.
If geoengineering continues and the weather manipulation continues and genetic modification continues overtaking, we're going to lose our ability to grow good, nutritious food. We are going to lose our ability to thrive.
I personally consider this ongoing toxic dumping into our atmosphere to be, along with nuclear radiation, the most dangerous threats to our health and to our environment.
We've seen UV scales go off the charts, which are a known consequence of geoengineering, ozone destruction. We've seen rainfall patterns disrupted in ways that meteorologists don't seem to be able to explain or predict.
The challenge that all of these weathermen face, all of them, whether they're aware of it or not, sooner or later they will be aware of it. And I went through a period after the epiphany of, how did I not see this sooner? How? I mean, seriously, I'm supposed to do this for a living. How did I not see this?
We seem to have lost our moral fiber and our ethical compass when we talk about that we all should live within an experiment that somebody else is conducting.
If you knew or could predict the weather at any given time, in any given area, then you control the fate of mankind and what they pay for everything.
Washington is not responsive to the average person. It's responsive to commercial interests who can spend millions on campaigns now without restriction, who literally drive the policy making in Washington, D.C.
I guess I'm under the belief that you can't control the weather. You know, I hope someday we could control the weather.
Power becomes an addictive thing.
We're taking what the Creator has created, usurping His authority, and bringing it under the authority of corporations.
I'm worried that one person or one group would try to have that much leverage over the whole planet.
I don't believe that anybody has the right to play God, especially when they're putting particles and chemicals into the atmosphere, which there's unintended and consequences that are known.
We don't know it all. We cannot assume the role of creator without dire consequences.
This is not a good idea, and this is not a reason to take and do a test. The atmosphere and the earth belong to all of us. It provides the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and no one should have the right to own it.
The biosphere is at risk from top to bottom. Though you have climate scientists calling for emergency geoengineering due to events like methane mass expulsion, which appears to be occurring in the Arctic.
It would have a significant impact on the way that we operate. Notice it also has enormous political, social, and economic implications.
And so we don't want to have some giant planetary oops, I mean capital oops, in which you have a loss of life.
It's much, much harder to actually figure out the environmental risks and effectiveness of these new methods than it is to cook them up.
They're creating an artificial environment to replace the natural environment.
Shredded ozone layer, global drought, toxified soils, poisoned populations, don't these issues matter?
Affecting ecosystems in ways we've never been able before. The whole concept of literally playing God with the technologies we have at our fingertips today.